Bumblebee Prime Filet Atlantic Salmon may be in your pantry right now. The fourth ingredient on that can is color added. The enemy is a labeling rule. Fresh salmon must say wild or farmed. Canned does not. In 2018, a court settlement made Bumblebee stop calling one salmon product smoked and premium. And the strange part isn't the cheap can, it's the $12 one. 3 are the real thing, including a Costco 6-pack at $7.55 a pound. So today we're walking through 8 canned salmon brands you should walk right past, and 3 that are actually worth your cart. Here's the standard, and it fits on one line. Real wild salmon is a Pacific species and salt. That's it. If you turn the can over and the ingredient list says pink salmon and salt, or sockeye salmon and salt, you're holding the real thing. And there's a shortcut for the species. Wild Pacific salmon carries the Latin name Oncorhynchus, so pink reads as Oncorhynchus gorbutia, and sockeye reads as Oncorhynchus nurca. Anything that says Atlantic salmon is farmed, every single time. Wild Atlantic salmon hasn't been commercially fished in this country in decades, so the word Atlantic on a can is not a region, it's a farm. Why does the real version cost more? Because you cannot schedule a wild run. Alaska's commercial salmon season runs roughly from the middle of May into September, and whatever swims by is what the world gets for the next 12 months. Farm salmon grows on a calendar, in pens, on a feed schedule, year-round. That's why about 80% of the world's salmon supply is now farmed. Now the part that made me angry. There is a rule called Country of Origin Labeling, 7 CFR Part 60, and it forces fresh and frozen fish at the counter to tell you 2 things: what country it came from and whether it was wild or farm-raised. Cook that same fish, can it, or smoke it, and it becomes a processed food item. Processed food items are exempt. So the salmon behind the glass has to confess. The salmon in the aisle does not. Same fish, same store, different rules. And one more thing, because this trips people up. Wild caught on a front label is a phrase. The species name is a legal identification. That's why I keep sending you to the ingredient panel instead of the front of the package. And later I'll show you a 60-second test with one thing from your medicine cabinet that tells you whether the stuff in that pouch is salmon or salmon plus filler. We're starting cheap because the cheapest one on this list tells the biggest lie about a single word. This is the little foil pouch in the Walmart canned fish aisle right below the tuna. 2.5 ounces, $1.78. If you buy pouches because you hate draining a can over the sink, this one has probably been in your cart. Look at the ingredient list. Salmon, water, modified food starch, vegetable broth from peas and carrot extract, salt, and natural smoke flavor. Read that last one again. Natural smoke flavor. This salmon never met smoke. Not a chip, not a plank, not a smokehouse. Smoke flavoring is a liquid. It gets poured on. The word smoked on the front of that pouch is describing a taste, not a process. And that distinction is doing a lot of quiet work. And the modified food starch is not there for flavor. Starch binds water. It holds moisture inside the fish so the pouch weighs what it's supposed to weigh and the texture stays soft instead of stringy. What you get is salmon that's slightly pasty on the tongue. Not bad, not rubbery, just softer than a fish should be, in a way you can't quite name until somebody names it for you. The salmon itself is real wild pink. I want to be fair about that. Nobody is smuggling a farmed fish into this pouch. And look at the front one more time. Premium, skinless, boneless, smoked. 4 words that all sound like upgrades. Skinless and boneless means the calcium went in the trash back at the plant, and smoked means a bottle. So the annoyance here is small, and it's specific. At $1.78 a pouch, every week, that's about $92 a year on salmon that has been thickened and flavored to imitate a process that never happened. That works out to $11.39 a pound for starch-assisted fish. That is the part that bothers me, not the price, the verb. But the next one is sneakier, because the front of it doesn't say smoked. It says lemon dill. And the color on that salmon isn't coming from the lemon. This is the pouch people buy when they're trying to eat better and want lunch to be easy. 2.6 ounces, $2.18 at HEB. Lemon dill is the one you've seen. Turn the package around. Pink salmon, water, lemon juice, and then 2% or less of dill, onion powder, garlic powder, turmeric, annatto extract for color, salt, citric acid, natural flavor, corn syrup solids, modified food starch from tapioca, gum arabic, and xanthan gum. 3 thickeners, corn syrup solids, and 2 coloring agents. Now here's the number that stopped me. The entire pouch is 70 calories, a whole pouch. That tells you how much of the weight in your hand is salmon and how much is sauce holding onto water. And get this, turmeric and annatto are the 2 colors food companies reach for when they want yellow-orange without saying dye. In a lemon dill product, you'd assume the golden tint is the lemon and the herbs. It isn't. It's plant pigment added on purpose so the sauce looks like it has more going on than it does. The texture tells on it too. Real canned salmon flakes apart in segments because that's how muscle is built. This spreads. It's smooth and slightly slippery, and that's the gum arabic and the xanthan doing their job, which is keeping water and oil from separating in a pouch that sits on a warehouse shelf for a year. $2.18 for 2.6 ounces is $13.42 a pound. Buy 1 a week and you've spent about $113 this year on seasoned sauce with salmon in it. They're banking on you reading the front panel and stopping there. Lemon dill sounds like 2 ingredients. It's 14. And here's the comparison that stings. Chicken of the Sea's plain 14 3/4 ounce can of wild Alaskan pink is $4.47 at Walmart, 30 cents an ounce. This pouch is 84 cents an ounce. Now, the next brand is the one people defend in the comments, because the salmon in it is genuinely fine. It's what's sitting next to the salmon that got me. This is the box in the glove compartment, or the desk drawer, or the bag your daughter packs for the ride to the doctor. 3.5 ounces, $1.78 at H-E-B, and it feels like the responsible choice next to a candy bar. The salmon inside is wild-caught pink and it's MSC certified, genuinely fine. Now look at the ingredient list on the salad cup. Salmon, which is pink salmon, water, salt, and vegetable broth. Then light mayonnaise dressing made with water, soybean oil, distilled vinegar, modified food starch, egg yolks, and salt. Then celery, then textured soy flour, then water chestnuts, and sugar. Textured soy flour. That's a protein extender. Ground, defatted soy pushed through heat and pressure until it turns chewy and fibrous. In the meat business, it goes into things to stretch the expensive part. It absorbs the dressing, it holds its shape, and in a chopped salad, it disappears completely. You will never find it with a fork. So the salmon is real, the salmon is also being helped. And notice where it sits. Textured soy flour comes in ahead of the water chestnuts and the sugar. Ingredients run in order of weight, so there's more soy in that cup than there is of 2 things you can see. What you get is a salad where every bite tastes uniform, slightly sweet from the sugar and a little soft. There's no moment where you hit an actual piece of fish. That's not an accident. That's the soy doing exactly what soy is added to do. At $1.78 a box, weekly, that's about $92 a year, and a meaningful share of the protein you thought you were buying came out of a soybean. Here's the thing, that's still a reasonable snack, and I'm not going to pretend it's poison. It's a shortcut product wearing a fish label, and the fish part is honest. It's the label game around it that's slippery. If this is already saving you from a bad shop, do me a favor and hit subscribe. We publish one of these every week. Now, brand number 5 is where the price tag stops making sense because the next one costs 6 times what this box costs, and it isn't wild at all. This is the Pretty Tin. Bright, illustrated, the kind of packaging that looks like art on the shelf at Target or Whole Foods. 3.7 ounces, $11.99. And I have to give Fishwife credit before I take it away. They tell you, right on the front and all over their listings, it says, farmed from Norway. The salmon is Atlantic salmon from Kvarøy Arctic, which is a real farm with real certifications, and the fish is actually smoked over wood, not painted with flavoring. Ingredients are Atlantic salmon, dark brown sugar, salt, and garlic salt. So why is it on a list about wild salmon? Because of what happens after the tin leaves their hands. Pull up that tin on Target.com and the product attributes list ASC certified and wild caught side by side. ASC is the Aquaculture Stewardship Council. Aquaculture means farm. Those two tags cannot both be true, and one of them is sitting there on a retail page that millions of people shop from. Fishwife didn't write that tag, but the tag is what a shopper sees. And it's worth knowing what ASC certifies because people read it as a quality badge. It's a farming standard. Water quality, escapes, antibiotics, feed sourcing, it's a serious program. What it does not do is turn a net pen into an ocean. And then there's the price. $11.99 for 3.7 ounces is $51.85 a pound. That is wild sockeye money. That is above wild sockeye money. You are paying a premium price for a pen-raised fish, and the only reason that feels acceptable is that the tin is beautiful and the story is charming. If a tin like this became your Sunday habit, that's about $623 a year. What makes this particularly frustrating is that Fishwife is the honest one in this section, and it still ends with you overpaying for farmed fish. Once you see it, you cannot unsee it. But the next brand does something worse. It prints the words color added right on the label and charges you anyway. If you're over 55, you know this brand. King Oscar is the gold and blue tin your father kept sardines in. It has been on American shelves for over a century, and it carries the trust that comes with that, which is why this one gets under my skin. 4.05 ounces, $6.34 at Walmart. Look at the ingredient list. Skinless and boneless farmed Atlantic salmon, color added. Olive oil, salt, color added. It's right there in the parentheses, in the first ingredient, on a premium European tin. Here's what those two words mean. Farmed salmon flesh is naturally gray. Wild salmon eats krill and small crustaceans that carry a pigment called astaxanthin, and that's what turns a wild fish pink from the inside. Pen-raised fish don't eat that, so producers put astaxanthin or a related pigment called canthaxanthin into the feed. The FDA classifies both as color additives, and that is exactly why the words color added have to appear on the label at all. And think about why that step exists. Nobody adds pigment because the fish needs it. They add it because a gray fillet does not sell. The pinkness you've spent your whole life reading as freshness is, in a pen-raised fish, a decision made months before harvest. In Europe, the legal ceiling for canthaxanthin in salmon feed is 25 milligrams per kilogram, cut down from 80 back in 2003 after their own scientific committee said the old level was too high. Here, the allowed level is still roughly 2.5 times the European ceiling, just not here. Texture-wise, farmed Atlantic in oil is soft and fatty and a little greasy on the finish. It's pleasant, it's also not what a wild fish tastes like. And at $6.34 for 4 ounces, you're at $25.05 a pound. Weekly, that's about $330 a year on a tinted farm fish in nice olive oil. Bottom line, King Oscar told you, in tiny letters, in a parenthesis, after a word almost nobody reads. But brand number 3 didn't put the disclosure on there at all, and a federal court is about to hear why. This is the tin for people who think they've outsmarted the canned fish aisle. Kohl's sits in the fancy section. Gold lettering, hand-packed language, extra virgin olive oil, 3.2 ounces. 2 run $11.96 at Walmart, so about $5.98 a tin, and the word on the front is Patagonian. Say that out loud. Patagonia, glaciers, wind, empty rivers at the bottom of the world. It's the most romantic geography you can print on a fish. Here's what Patagonian actually describes. Chile. Salmon raised in ocean net pens off the Chilean coast, the second largest farmed salmon industry on the planet. Patagonian is not a species and it's not a fishing method, it is a place, and putting a fish farm somewhere beautiful does not make the fish wild. On July 15, 2025, a consumer class action was filed against Kohl's parent company, Kohl Willeden LLC, in the Central District of California, case number 225CV06462. The complaint alleges the company sold its farmed salmon as naturally pink when the color comes from astaxanthin in the feed, and that federal and California law required that additive to be disclosed on the label. I want to be careful here. That is an allegation. It has not been proven, and Kohl's has not been found liable of anything. But the filing exists, the case number is public, and the question in front of that court is whether the pink in that tin came from the ocean or from a feed bag. At $5.98 for 3.2 ounces, you're paying $29.90 a pound. Weekly, about $311 a year for a premium costume on a Chilean penfish. And notice the pattern forming here. Nobody has to say the word wild to sell you wild. A place name does it, or a mountain range, or a jumping fish on the front. The picture carries the claim, and a picture cannot be fact-checked. And this is where the shelf gets weird, because the next brand isn't premium at all. It's the $4 can, and it's fighting the same fight. This is the 7-ounce can with the blue and white label in the international aisle, or down where the imports live. $4.97 at Walmart, $11.28 a pound. Big can, low price, easy peel lid, and a very confident label. The ingredient list is 3 items long. Salmon fillet, water, salt. That sounds perfect. That sounds like exactly what I told you to look for at the start of this video. Now notice what's missing. There's no species name anywhere on it. No Oncorhynchus, no Atlantic, nothing about wild or farm raised, and no country. Just the word salmon doing all the work by itself. And on the Walmart listing, the product bullet promises no artificial preservatives, additives, or fillers. The real kicker is what that does to a shopper like you. You went looking for a short ingredient list. You found one. 3 items and a promise of nothing added, sitting on a can that will not name the fish. On May 28, 2025, a class action was filed against MW Polar Foods in California. Case number 25, CV1358. The complaint alleges the salmon in these cans is farm-raised, and that the company failed to disclose astaxanthin, which the filing describes as an artificial additive used to color the meat pink to imitate the natural color of wild-caught salmon. Again, an allegation, not a verdict, but sit with the shape of it. A can that lists 3 ingredients, promises no additives, prints no species, and is now in federal court over whether the pink was put there on purpose. The reviews on that product page are warm, by the way. People say it tastes better than the others, that they've bought it for years, that it's a great price. Nobody is complaining. That's what makes it work. $4.97 a week is about $258 a year on a can that will not tell you what fish is in it. And the final skip brand is the one I'd be most annoyed to find in my own pantry, because a federal court already forced them to change that label once, and the marketing copy still says the old thing. Here it is. The flat red and gold tin, 3.75 ounces, $3.64 at Walmart. 4.6 stars across 500 ratings. This is a beloved product. People eat it on crackers on Christmas Eve. Read the name on the can slowly. Smoke-flavored coho salmon fillets in oil. That name is not a marketing decision. That name is the result of a lawsuit. In December 2017, a consumer filed a class action against Bumblebee Foods in the Southern District of California, case number 317 CV02447. Back then, the product was called Premium Select Medium Red Smoked Salmon Fillets in Oil. The complaint alleged the fish was farm-raised Chilean coho, colored through its feed to look wild, and that it had never been smoked at all. The flavoring went on afterward. It also pointed at the packaging art, snow-capped mountains and a jumping salmon, and argued it was built to make you think Alaska. In February 2018, Bumblebee agreed to repackage it, drop the word premium, drop medium red, change smoked to smoke-flavored, and depict the fish accurately as a farm-raised coho. They did it. The can on the shelf today says smoke-flavored. That is a company keeping its word, and I'll say that plainly. Now go read the online product description for that same can. The bullet points at Walmart right now describe it as delicious and smoky wild salmon fillets. Another bullet calls it premium Bumblebee canned salmon, wild, premium, the 2 words the settlement was about, still sitting in the copy that shows up when you shop from your phone. The can got fixed. The listing did not. And think about how we shop now. Phone out in the aisle or adding to a delivery cart on the couch. For a lot of people, that web page is the only label they ever read, and the can the settlement actually covered never enters the transaction. And the fish inside is soft, oily, and evenly colored the whole way through, which is the texture of a fillet that grew on a feed schedule instead of swimming up a river. That's $15.53 a pound. Weekly, about $189 a year. Once you see it, you cannot unsee it. The label learned its lesson. The web page never had to. All right, here's the 60-second test I promised, and you need one thing you probably already own. Tincture of iodine from the medicine cabinet. Iodine turns blue-black when it touches starch. That's not a food industry trick, that's basic chemistry, and it's the same reaction they teach ninth graders. Open your can or pouch and drain the liquid onto a white saucer. Not the fish, just the liquid. Then put 1 drop of iodine in it and watch for about 10 seconds. If the drop stays brown or amber and just spreads out, there's no meaningful starch in there. That's a good result. That's fish, water, and salt behaving like fish, water, and salt. If it goes dark blue, almost black, you've got starch in the pack. That's your modified food starch, and it means part of what you paid for by weight is a binder holding water in place. Do not eat the sample you tested. Rinse the saucer and throw it out. Now here's the second half, and it takes 5 seconds. Press the drained fish with the back of a fork. Real wild salmon breaks into flakes because muscle is built in segments and it separates along those lines. A fillet that's been softened smears instead. It goes paste before it goes flake. Run this on the pouch in your drawer tonight. Then run it on one of the 3 brands I'm about to give you, and you'll understand exactly what you've been paying for and what you haven't. Now, if you've made it this far, here's the payoff. 3 canned salmon brands that are actually what they say they are. And one of them costs the same as that great value pouch we opened with. But the surprise isn't that the real brands are better. The surprise is which one is cheapest, because the honest answer costs less per pound than 6 of the 8 brands we just walked past. Let's start in 1948 with a man named Cornelius Hoffman, who everybody called Case. He was born in Holland in 1918 and came to California as a baby when his father transferred out with Shell Oil. In 1947, he started selling canned seafood across Southern California, and by the late 60s, he'd built it into a real company. Crown Prince is still owned and run by the Hoffman family, 3 generations in. That matters here for a boring reason that turns out to be the whole point. A family company that has been packing the same fish for 75 years has no quarterly pressure to shave a nickel out of the pack by adding water and a binder. Nobody upstairs is asking them to. Here's your package proof, and it's 3 things you can check standing in the aisle. The can says, Sustainably Wild Caught, Product of USA. It carries the MSC Blue Fish Mark for a certified sustainable fishery, and it's traditionally packed with the skin and the bones left in, which nobody does to a farmed fillet because the entire business model of farmed salmon is selling you a boneless block. The bones are soft enough to mash with a fork, and they're where the calcium is. Your grandmother knew that. The industry spent 40 years convincing everyone it was a defect. That's the quiet trade nobody explains at the shelf. Skinless and boneless costs you nutrition, and it lets a farmed fillet and a wild fillet look like the same product once the skin is gone. What real people say about it comes down to the same note over and over. It tastes like the canned salmon they remember, and there's no watery layer sitting at the bottom of the can. You'll find it at Walmart around $5.82 for 7.5 ounces, which is $12.42 a pound. Look for the small, plain can with the blue MSC fish on it, not the loud one. There's also a low-sodium version if salt is something you watch. 2004. A seafood industry veteran named Bill Carvalho starts Wild Planet because he'd watched the canning business get very good at one specific trick, which is selling you water. Here's how a conventional pack works. The fish gets cooked once, the juices get drained off and sold as fish oil, then the fish goes in the can and gets cooked again with water or broth added back to make up the weight. 2 cooks. One of them exists to replace what the first one took out. Wild Planet cooks it once, in the can, in its own juices. That decision costs them real money on every case because the oil they're not extracting is a product they're not selling, and the water they're not adding is weight they have to make up with actual fish. Call the exact dollars an estimate, the direction is not in question. Less water in the can means more fish in the can, means higher cost per unit. The package proof is the shortest ingredient list in this entire video. Wild pink salmon, Oncorhynchus gorbutia, and salt. 2 items, and one of them is the Latin name of a wild Pacific fish printed right on the label. There's a no salt added version where the ingredient list is literally one word. And if this ranking is useful, hit the like button. It really helps the channel cut through the algorithm. The reviews are consistent about one thing. People say the can is dense, that there's no puddle when you open it, and that it doesn't fall apart into mush. Try it yourself. Tip 1 onto a plate next to any pouch from the first half of this video. One lands as a piece, the other keeps spreading. That's water and starch finding their level. It's $7.39 for 6 ounces at Target, which is $19.71 a pound. Not cheap. But compare that to the Fishwife tin at $51.85 a pound, and ask yourself which one is actually the expensive habit. And here's the one that makes the whole video click into place. The Kirkland Signature canned salmon at Costco is packed by Trident Seafoods, and Trident is printed right on the label. Trident started in 1973 when a man named Chuck Bundrent put his money together with 2 other crab fishermen and built a boat called the Billiken. Bundrent had driven to Seattle in 1961 as a college freshman with $80 in his pocket to make a little money fishing. He never left. The problem they solved was spoilage. That boat could catch, cook, and freeze at sea, so the fish stopped waiting days to reach a shore plant. Trident is now the largest seafood company in the country, still built on wild Alaska fish. Turn the can around. Pink salmon, Oncorhynchus gorbutia, and salt. The Latin name is on a warehouse club store brand, not on the $12 tin and not on the fancy Patagonian one. It's on the cheap one. And here's the kicker. You could make this yourself if you wanted to. A pound of wild sockeye or pink fillet, a little salt, and time in a pressure canner at the recommended pressure for your altitude, and you have it. We'll put the method in the description. 6 cans, 6 ounces each, $16.99 at Costco. That's $2.83 a can and $7.55 a pound. Go back through this video. Cheaper than the Bumblebee Coho, the Coles, the King Oscar, the MW Polar, the Starkist pouch, a fifth of what the Fishwife tin costs. It's the least expensive salmon here and the only one that prints its own species in Latin. Look for the plain white box in the aisle near the canned tuna. 6 cans, shrink wrapped together. The label is boring in the best possible way. And that's the answer to the question I opened with. The expensive tin hides the fish because the price is doing the persuading. The warehouse can names the fish because the price can't. Here's the one thing worth remembering. Fresh salmon at the counter is legally required to tell you wild or farmed. Cook it and put it in a can, and that requirement disappears because canned food counts as processed. Worst skip goes to the Bumblebee smoke-flavored Coho, where a court settlement fixed the can in 2018, and the online listing still calls it wild and premium today. Best real is the Kirkland Signature 6-pack at $7.55 a pound, the cheapest and the most honest thing in this video. So here's your move on the next grocery run. Turn the can over and find the fish. If the ingredient list says Oncorhynchus, buy it. If it says Atlantic or just says salmon with no species at all, put it back. Next week we found something in a national brand of canned tuna that made us go back and check 3 separate cans, and it has to do with what the word solid is allowed to mean. Drop the brand you still trust in the comments. We're building the list together. Hit subscribe if this changed how you shop today. We'll see you in the next aisle.